Okay, so in this video what we're going to do is question 5, which is this one here, using the server operating system to web browse and set Ether00 as RIP and DHCP on Ether01. As per, we're going to use this machine to web browse into our router. So we're going to have to web browse into 10.2. We're currently at 10.3. So we're going to use that IP address to web browse. We want to turn RIP on here and DHCP on the second card here. So we've set up the basic stuff on this router. That was the previous question. Now we're just going to put the final setup for this router. Okay, so let's go to our server and I'm going to web browse. Let's just add another tab and go to 192.168.10.2, which is this interface card here. And it's got to start the little DHCP server in there. So you can see it's still trying. So it's obviously got to it. So now we go more information and go to the web page. So now we're web browsing into the router. We're going to use admin with a password of ZeroShell, which is the default for ZeroShell. We're going to remember it. And what we need to do is go to the routing section and set up RIP, the same as we did on the previous router. So we're going to go down to the router on the left hand side and across to RIP, and it's currently disabled, so we're going to enable it. And looking at our network diagram here, RIP is on our first card, so that's Ether00, whereas Ether01 is plugged into the second switch. So we need Ether00 plugged into the RIP enabled interfaces and hit save. Now to check that this RIP function is working, I'm going to hit the routing table here, and we're going to see that our routing table has been modified via this RIP protocol. Okay, so what it's done is it's said that in order to get to the 172.25.104 network, we have to go through 10.1. That's the gateway, and yeah, that makes sense. And in actual fact, the default gateway would do exactly the same job. Okay, it's got a route exactly the same way, which has been set when we set up the gateway. The better thing to do is to actually look at the previous, the front firewall, and look at its routing table. So in its routing table you can see that the 11 subnet, which is the one on switch 2, has been put into the routing table here via the RIP protocol, and the gateway to the 11 subnet is through the IP address of 10.2. So what we're talking about at the moment is this router here, and it's saying in order to get to the 11 subnet you've got to go through 10.2, which absolutely lines up. So the RIP protocol between these two routers is working and modifying the routing table in both routers to show where all the known subnets are. And that's exactly what we were after. So back to here, we've done RIP on Ether00. What we need to do now is DHCP on Ether01. Now Ether01 is plugged into switch 2 and it's got an IP address of 11.1. So we need to set up DHCP to give out IP addresses in the 11 subnet for when our workstation is plugged into switch 2 compared to where it currently is plugged into switch 1. So here it's getting its IP address from the PDC, our server, and it's getting an IP address in the 10 subnet. If we plug it into switch 2, we want it to get an IP address from the DHCP server on this Ether01. So back to our router. I want to save all that. And I want to go to DHCP, which is also over in the networking section. and I want to set up DHCP for this second interface. So it currently says it's not running, so we need to enable it. Oh, actually, probably we just go new. Let's put a new one in. And the available networks, we're going to use the 11 subnet on Ether01. So that's where we're putting our DHCP server. We're going to go OK. So we've now configured it. Interesting. I think maybe ticking that box there didn't help. Well, now it's done it anyway, so it's enabled it by itself, it's made it active, and it's put the stuff in for the 11 subnet. So the range we actually want is 192.168.11.100, say, to 192.168.11.200. So we're mirroring very similarly the other range that we've got in the other subnet. The default gateway for all clients out here is going to be 11.1, so the way that they're going to get out to the internet is through this router at 11.1. So that's correct. However, the DNS server is not correct. The DNS server needs to be this machine over here, which is at 10.3. So we need to change this to be 10.3. And then we're going to hit the save button. And that saves. Now that DHCP server is set up. And that finishes the question, this question here. Okay, so that ends this video. Ready for the next question.